that, we go to stateofthestate.ks.com. You have the next question. Raj Goyle will start.
Americans lost millions of dollars in the most recent crash of the stock market because of fraudulent, unregulated investments in mortgages that should never have been approved. If elected, how do you plan to stop the fraud and abuse recently seen on Wall Street by large financial institutions?
I'm glad you asked that question. We absolutely must have more transparency and accountability on Wall Street and in our financial system. It's about respecting your tax dollars, and I think it's an absolute outrage that both parties, over the last 10 years, deregulated the banks, and then we let reckless CEOs and Wall Street banks crash our economy, break the rules, and rather than penalize them, we gave them bailouts and bonuses. And I think that's absolutely wrong. Those people who caused this mess should have been fired, period. And I do think that we must have personal responsibility, absolutely, in ownership and in the housing acquisition process. But at the same time, we must make sure that the rules are fair, the regulations are enforced, and that we have a stock market and an economy that works for all Kansans and all Americans. It is clear, I think a lot of us felt, that in the last few years, the system was rigged, and we found out that when this economy crashed, that indeed it was. And so I will stand up always for the consumer, for average Kansans, to make sure that this economy, the rules are fair, that they are enforced, and that we need to stop the culture of wasteful spending and bailouts and bonuses, and make sure that we have an economy that works for everyone.
Who could disagree that it shouldn't be fair and transparent, and that we shouldn't have regulations and have folks make sure that they comply with the laws? Look, the financial catastrophe that happened in August 2008 is a direct result of horrible federal policy. We created a system where we had incentives for people to make loans to folks they shouldn't be making loans to. We created incentives for folks to take loans that in their better judgment they would have, they might not have taken them. And we ended up with housing markets, frankly, on both coasts that were overblown and led to tremendous financial distress that's impacted us right here in Kansas. And that's now history. We've got to move forward. We've got to come up with solutions. I didn't hear Representative Goyle speak of one solution, one proposal, one thing he would truly do. He talked in platitudes about fairness and kindness and transparency, but no real solution. Here's the real solution. Here's what's happened. This administration passed something they call financial reform. Talk to your community banker about what financial reform means to that community banker. Folks who are lending to real Kansans right here in the 4th District, in Mount Hope, in Heston, in Halston, in Kingman, and Harper. These community bankers are going to be devastated by the Obama-Pelosi financial reform. It's a disaster. We will have trouble with regulations. We will have small banks. We will have small banks all over Kansas. We will have small banks all over Kansas, incapable of doing what they've done for decades, making loans to our agriculture folks, farmers, small family farmers, making loans to our small businesses. These are the things that create jobs. Instead, what we did in Washington, D.C., we passed a big law that sounded all fancy and tried to inflict punishment on the largest financial institutions. Well, the failure was when the federal government allowed those financial institutions to take and socialize their risk. Those big companies took risk, and had they succeeded, would have been able to keep them. And when they failed, transferred that risk to us as taxpayers. Frankly, that was both parties. Both parties made that mistake. That was the error when we talk about bailouts. No more bailouts. No more bailouts for big companies. No more bailouts for small guys. We can both agree. But let's not let real reform and the small community bankers here in Kansas, the folks who are driving this economy and creating the very jobs we both addressed in the previous questions, let's not let those folks struggle because folks in Washington, D.C. want to score a political point.
Please be respectful of the candidates.
Well, I'm glad that we agree that the culture of bailouts must end, but I think we do have another fundamental disagreement. What you heard in my opponent's answer was, once again, do nothing. We had the biggest financial crisis in 70 years. That Wall Street failed us, and the regulatory system failed us. And so what we need is to crack down more than ever on the abuses that led to this financial catastrophe. But instead, it's more partisanship and more name-calling. The fact is that the majority party is going to cause yet another crisis. Well, the fact of the matter is we must put rules in place that are enforced equally, that absolutely free up capital and lending to create jobs, to let small businesses be the engine of this economic recovery. We know how to do it in Kansas, and if we would simply level that playing field and get things back on track, we can do it right here in Kansas.
You know, facts are stubborn things. I've been in the real world. I've been in the business world. I've gone to those banks to seek credit, to try and grow my business and grow jobs here in Kansas. I've seen what happens. I've watched as banks now have regulators in the administration of this president. And it's not name calling to talk about policies. It's not name calling to say, hey, this policy is bad for America. What I've seen is the same thing you all have seen. You've seen credit tighten up, housing become difficult to afford. You've seen jobs go away. These are all a direct result of big government trying to impose solutions on America that aren't the right fit to solve the nation's problems.